The government today unveiled ambitious plans to slash the proportion of Māori in jail from more than 50% to just 16%, or proportional to the Māori population. The strategy, Hokai Rangi, will be rolled out over the next 5 years and will see inmates get more phone calls and visits with their families and kaupapa Māori programs and therapies at every prison. The program will be designed alongside Māori, and Corrections will also recruit a Māori Deputy Chief Executive. And the government will explore the possibility of iwi administered sentences like community work, and will also research how to keep women, especially those who are the main child carers, out of jail. Joining us now is Corrections Chief Executive Christine Stevenson. Can we begin by just covering off possible changes to mail that prisoners can send or receive? What are you asking the government for in terms of extending your powers there?
Hi, Lisa. I thought we were talking about Hokai Rangi, actually.
Absolutely, and we'll get to that, but obviously this has cropped up in the meantime, so I'm wondering if you can clarify for us what powers you're seeking.
Just to say, first of all, Corrections takes its responsibility for public safety extremely seriously. We have high standards, and with the events of late last week, we failed our own high standards. I would like to reiterate my unreserved apology for the distress that this caused to a number of New Zealanders, many of them impacted by the tragic events of 15 March. So we are strengthening our processes around mail, and we've centralised mail for prisoners that we regard as being a potential threat to public safety. So that's happened as of this morning. I've also announced a mail complaints line and an 0800 number, which is 0800 345 006. And if people are receiving mail from prisoners and they do not wish to, could they please ring us and let us know, and we'll do our very best to stop that.
Okay, let's move on to Hokai Rangi. This new approach, it's going to emphasise humanising and healing prisoners with respect, treating them with respect, upholding their mana and dignity. Now, that all sounds great. So, in practical terms, how will that change the way you treat prisoners?
Look,
on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, I'd say to you that we do try to treat prisoners with decency and humanity now. But as it says in Hokai Rangi, and you can see this, we do still use terms which are fairly shameful. We talk about a muster when we mean prison population. We talk about feed-outs when we mean giving prisoners meals. And these are the sorts of terms that most New Zealanders would apply to livestock. This is not the way to talk about people. So those are just a couple of very small examples of treating prisoners like people.
So that requires a cultural change, because people talk about prisoners being institutionalised, but do you think that prison officers are, they can be institutionalised too in terms of the way they treat prisoners?
I think they probably can. You know, I have 10,000 staff, and today they were caring and managing 10,000 prisoners roughly, and about 30,000 offenders who are on community sentence. And amongst those 10,000 staff, there are a great many who have enormous humanity and treat prisoners with great decency, whilst balancing our security and public safety obligations. But I think it's also fair to say that perhaps over time some officers have become a little bit blasé, and this is a really good opportunity to say no, actually. Prison is the punishment. Prisoners do not require further punishment once they're in prison, so let's treat them as human beings. And the thing is, most prisoners will eventually be released from prison. We want them to come out better equipped to participate as citizens, to support their families than they were when they came in. And one dimension of doing that is to treat people as human beings.
So do you think that there are some people working within Corrections who will resist a change of this level?
I would like to say not, but with a workforce of 10,000, there are probably some who will. But, you know, if they are not prepared to behave as they ought, then perhaps they need to think about working somewhere else.
In terms of these changes, does this mean that Corrections will now be committed to meeting international regulations for minimum standards for prisoners?
We do now.
Double bunking, sizes of cells? That's obviously been brought into question by the Ombudsman and also compared to standards set overseas.
Yes, look, double bunking has become necessary because the prison population reached levels, particularly last year, which were unprecedented. Most double-bunked cells around New Zealand are actually of a sufficient size. Would I prefer not to be in double bunks? I would absolutely prefer not to be in double bunks, but sometimes there are practical realities in the prison system. However, we have new accommodation which is near to completion coming in on stream, and if the prison population stays roughly where it is, then we will be able to accommodate more prisoners in single cells from the end of this year.
Because that is the dilemma, isn't it? You're only as good as the resources and tools that you are given. And so if you want to treat people with humanity and mana and dignity, which may involve them having their own cell, if you don't have the resources to do it, well, you're being given an unachievable goal.
No, I think I disagree. Look, good facilities are nice to have, and over time I would like to improve the quality of our facilities where appropriate and where safe to do so, to perhaps soften them up a little bit. But, you know, the main thing I see when I go about is if you've got staff who have got a real wish to work with prisoners and to help them with their rehabilitative needs, to help address their criminogenic needs, you know, the facilities are only a part of that. Actually, staff working really well with prisoners is what makes the difference. And with the strategy, actually, we're going to be working much more with Māori, and that, I think, will make a shift, absolutely.
One of the primary goals is no one will be further harmed or traumatised by their experience with corrections. How realistic is that as a goal?
It is an aspirational goal, but...
So what does that mean? Because people throw that word around all the time. So does that mean we're actually going to try and get there, or we're just saying it to make everybody feel good?
No, of course we're going to try and get there. We don't set goals that we're not going to try to, achieve. This is not going to be easy. Prisons are tough places, and particularly for Māori, we have enormous overrepresentation. Māori make up around 16% of the general population, and yet they contribute 52% to the prison population. This is a terrible statistic, and one that we should all be very, very unhappy with. So our aspiration is to do much, much better, but it will not be easy. This is a situation that has been created across generations, and it will probably take a generation or two to achieve what we want to.
But again, in practical terms, how do you ensure no one suffers further harm or is further traumatised by their stay with you?
So I think it's going to be about working with the individuals, figuring out what works for them, trying to keep them strongly connected with their whānau and family if that's possible. It's the way staff behave toward people. We've got some excellent programs now in prisons. We give prisoners excellent training. We help them with their drug and alcohol addiction needs. In many cases, the health services that prisoners receive, many prisoners come to us with health issues because they haven't been registered with a GP or what have you, so we're able to help with that. But, prisons are tough places, so our staff are going to have to work very, very hard to try to ensure individuals are held in the best possible place for them and get the support that they need.
You have said that this could be, an intergenerational aspiration, but you've also said that you'd like to see a decent drop in the Māori prison population in the next 5 years. What, by your definition, is a decent drop?
That's a very good question. One of the first things we are going to be doing under the strategy is to we've identified measures, but to get the indicators so that we can track progress. So I don't have a number for you now, but that's something that we'll be working on in the next few months.
So when do you expect to have that number for the short term?
I would hope by the end of this year.
All right. And just before you go, a deputy CEO, Māori CEO, what is the time frame for that?
That is imminent. I hope to be able to make an announcement on the person that I'm going to appoint to that within the next 10 days.
So you already know who that person is? It's just firming up the appointment? Isn't it an internal appointment?
I'm not in a position to say at this point. We're working through a proper process, but I'm very pleased with the person who will be appointed, and I think that they'll be a terrific addition to our team.
We appreciate you joining us this evening. That is Christine Stevenson, who is the CEO for the Department of Corrections.